Begin the current Daf Mesech the Sotah Daf Mem Beis. We begin the 8th parak Meshuach Mulchama, which continues the theme. Today's discuss exactly the order of why we're quoting it the way we're quoting it, but it continues with the theme of the previous parak El Nemarim, which is B'Lashon HaKodesh, that there are certain things we said on Nemarim B'Chalashon, certain things on Nemarim B'Lashon HaKodesh. Again, the reason why we brought this into this Mesech was because one of the things that was the parsha of the Sotah regarding if it had to be Nemarim B'Chalashon and B'Lashon HaKodesh. And now we continue with the Meshuach Mulchama, which was one of the announcements that had to be made also B'Lashon HaKodesh. Shiur's Kos Pas B'Kal Zich Necheskel turn to Daf Chaim. Christian brings today's daf. Some discuss in today's daf on the function of the Meshuach Mulchama. What exactly does this anointed kohen for the war do? The source that he has to speak in Lashon HaKodesh. He also mentioned the word Shema Yisrael, which the Gemara says it's not by chance that he says these famous words. That even if you didn't fulfill only Kriyish Mashachas Va'arvis, you're not going to be given over to the hands of the enemy. He repeats 4 times that they shouldn't be frightened. Al Yedech Lavavchem, Al Tidu, Al Tachpezu, Al Tartzabepnem. The Gemara discusses what are these 4 things that he's addressing about becoming afraid in wartime. When it says in the pasuk Hashem Lekeichem Ahilechim Mochem Lahilochem Lochem Emoivechem L'Shiaeschem, the Gemara tells us that refers to the machna of the Aron that goes in front of the Jewish people. And the Gemara discusses regarding the battle with Goliath, as we know, the giant that fought against the Jewish people. To begin the current Daf Mem Beis, the 8th parak Meshuach Mulchama. Says the Mishnah, Meshuach Mulchama. This is a kohen that was added on to his status, that he was anointed for wartime. So, B'shah Shemadaber Eloam, at the time when he speaks to the people, B'Lashon HaKodesh HaMadaber. So he would speak in Lashon HaKodesh. How do we know this? Shema says a passage in the bottom. It says that when you're going to come close to the war, the kohen is going to come forth. What's the kohen doing over there? This is the kohen who is anointed for the purposes of war. He's going to speak to the people. Says the Mishnah, Lashon HaKodesh. That's in Lashon HaKodesh, which Gemara is going to ask, where do you see from here anything about Lashon HaKodesh? Just as he should speak to the people. But the Gemara will address that question. Then it says, Omar Aleihem, and he tells them, Shema Yisrael, v'goyme here, O Jewish people, etc. Like it says over there, you're going to come close today to the wartime, and aloivechem on your enemies. What does this mean that you're coming to fight against your enemies? Says the Mishnah, it's coming to tell a very important message. You're coming to fight your enemies, v'loy alachechem. It's not on your brothers. Meaning it's lo Yehuda al Shimon. It's not that like Sheba Yehuda is coming to fight with Sheba Shimon. Lo Shimon al Binyamin. It's not Sheba Shimon fighting with Binyamin. Where Sheim tiplu biyadim. If you fall into the hands of your brothers, Yirachma Aleichem, they'll have compassion on you. Kamosh and Emar. It's pasuk in Dibra Yamim Beis by Pekech ben Yahu, who fought with Achaz, as it's brought in Dibra Yamim in Chronicles that they captured many from the tribe of Yehuda. Now there was a prophet over there. His name was Oidid. He rebuked the Jewish people, telling them, "What do you mean? It's because of the anger of Hashem on the sons of Judah that they were given over into your hands. But you're going to destroy them, that they have no way of recuperating." So now he told them to go ahead and listen to me and return their captive. So the pasuk tells us, "Vayikumu ha'anoshim asher nikva b'shemus." So the men that were singled out with their names, they stood up, v'yachziku b'shivaya, and they grabbed a hold of those captives from Shevet Yehuda. And all their ones that were undressed, they dressed them from the bounty of the spoils of the war. So these were they fought against Shevet Yehuda, and they dressed them, and they clothed them, and they gave them shoes, and they gave them to eat and to drink, and they anointed them, and they escorted them with donkeys. L'chol koshel means for all the weak ones of them that couldn't go by foot. They brought them to Yericha, the city of the palm trees, near their brothers. And they brought them back to the Shamron, and that was the end of the parsha. So you see, okay, when you're fighting against your brothers, so you see that they have compassion and mercy. That's what the pasuk coming to tell you. No, you're fighting alo yevechem on your enemies and not on your brothers. Rather, alo yevechem atem hochem. You're going to fight against your enemies. Shemetipl biyadim, you might fall in their hands. Ein merach maleichem, they're not going to have any mercy on you. Now, it says there in the pasuk these 4 different terminologies of not having a fear. Al yedech lavavchem, don't have your hearts be soft. Al tidu, don't be afraid. Val tachpezu, don't tremble. V'goyme, etc. what do these four types of things mean? So the Mishnah tells us, when it says al yerech levavchem, don't have your heart soft, it's mipnei tzahalas susim. It's because of the neighing of the horses that make a lot of noise, and v'tziktzayach haravis, and it's the glittering of the swords. This is a very sensory type of a fear. So that's a saying, let your hearts not be soft. Then when the pasuk says al tiru, don't be afraid, that's mipnei hagofas trisim. That's because of the clashing of the shields one to the other, that they bang them one on the other, and the voice comes out like a huge sound of a multitudes to intimidate those that are coming against them. And v'shifas hakalgasin, which that's the flow of the soldiers. So the armies coming and clashing their shields, that makes a lot of noise. That's intimidating. So that's it says al tiru from that. Al tachbazu, and it says don't panic. That's mikol koronis. That's from the sound of their horns that are blaring. And al taratzu, don't be broken. That's mikol tzavaches. That's because from the battle cry, from their shouts. So these are very different elements that are very intimidating, and therefore it says these four lashonos of not to be afraid. Now it says within the pasuk, why should you not be afraid? Because Hashem your God that goes with you. So the Mishnah explains, they're coming with the victory of the power of a flesh and blood person. But you're coming with the might, the victory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Philistines came with the win of Goliath. What was at the end? At the end he fell by the sword. They fell with him. Bnei Ammon, the people of Ammon, they came to win with Shalshevach, who he was the general of Hadarazah. What was his end? At the end he fell by the sword. They fell with him. You are not like this. Because Hashem your God that goes with you to fight for you, etc. That's the camp of the Aron. The Aron HaKodesh goes, and that's why you're going to win. So now the Gemara goes back to the opening halacha that we said, Meshuach Malchama, when he speaks to the people, he speaks B'lashon HaKodesh. Says the Gemara that my kama, what are you saying? Where do you learn out from the words that v'diber ela'am? How do you see anything about Lashon HaKodesh? It says Gemara Hachim, this is the source. And then it says in the pasuk v'diber, as we just mentioned, it says v'diber la'am. And Ulal Noim, it says within Shemais by the Sarah Sadibra, it says Moshe Yedaber. Moshe spoke, and God responded in his voice. Malan B'Shlai Kodesh, we already established this in the previous parak, that just like by the Sarah Sadibra, Moshe Rabbeinu spoke in Lashon HaKodesh, and it says the word Moshe Yedaber. Afkan also over here, when it says v'diber la'am, is b'Lashon HaKodesh, and that's how we know that it was in Lashon HaKodesh. Now, Tanaman Brisa that we mentioned before says v'nigesh hakoyin v'diber la'am. The Mishnah told us that the kohen comes near and he speaks to the people. Now, Yachol, you would think kol kohen sheyirtza. Any kohen that wants to says v'nigesh hakoyin. Any kohen that wants to goes and speaks by the word. It says over there v'dibru hashoitrim, and the officers will speak. So the pasuk seems to be comparing the officers to the kohen, which is just like the officers are appointed. Avkan b'mamunah, so to over here, the kohen has to be appointed. Says the Gemara be'emu kohen gadol. Maybe then say refers to the high priest who he's appointed. No, dumi the shaiter. It has to be similar to the officer, which is ma shaiter, just like an officer shesh b'munal gabav. There's someone that's appointed ahead on top of him, meaning you have the judge that's appointed above the officer, because the officer is meant to enforce what the judge tells him and forces him to do. Even in today's judicial system. So too, a kohen is told about that he has someone appointed on top of him, which that would be the kohen gadol. So therefore, it would be a different kohen that's appointed. Says Gemara, kohen gadol nami. Why can't it be the high priest also? He can melech hagabav. The kohen gadol has the king on top of him, who he has to listen to him. Says no, we're talking about regarding his service. Regarding his service, he doesn't report to the melech. Yeah, the melech would be able to veto things or whatever, but regarding that vaida, that's the kohen gadol, no one's on top of him, and therefore can't be the kohen gadol. Says okay, the Me'im Skan. Maybe it refers to we know the deputy Kohen Gadol. Maybe he speaks these words because he's appointed, and there's someone appointed on top of him, which is the Kohen Gadol. He seems to be a good choice. Says Gemara, no Skan la mamunuhu. The deputy Kohen Gadol is not considered appointed. What does that mean? Because the time we learned the Brayso, Skan Kahanim, he was the Skan of the Kahanim. Lamoskan mamuna. For what is the deputy appointed? Meaning, for what does it mean that he's appointed and prepared? It's only Shem Ida by Psul B'Kohen Gadol. If something invalidating happens to the Kohen Gadol, he'll become Tameh. So Nichnas Mishamash Tachtav, he'll come in and he'll serve in place of him. But as long as there's no invalidation happening to the Kohen Gadol, the Skan has no Gedula at all. He's not really appointed for anything. He's in case of emergency. He's a fire extinguisher. But he's not anything, and therefore it wouldn't be considered that he's appointed for anything. And therefore Mashuach Muhammad is some other Kohen that has someone on the top of him like the Kohen Gadol, and he was appointed, designated specifically for wartime. Now, the Mishnah said that V'amar Aleim, he says to them, Shema Yisrael, hear, or Israel, Atem Karev Ma'ayim, L'mochama Lo Yivechem. But the Gemara says, Ma'ishna Shema Yisrael. What's this interesting? Why does he start with these words? We know they definitely sound vaguely familiar, these words, Shema Yisrael. Shimon ben Yochi. Oh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the Jewish people, even if you didn't fulfill it, Kriya Shema Shachris V'Arvis. Only Kriya Shema in the morning and in the evening. You're not going to be given over in their hands. Kedai Reb Shimon, Lismechalov. Yeah, we're going to Shimon Yechai. That when you go to fight the war, it's going to be, and everyone's going to be learning this tomorrow. So you're not given over into their hands just by saying Kriya Shema in the morning and the evening. That's what he was alluding to them by saying Shema Yisrael. Again, we don't realize the power of our mitzvahs that we do Yom by just saying Kriya Shema. He was telling them that schos itself is going to save you. Now the Mishnah said that there's 4 different types of wordings that he continues, Al Yerech Lavavchem, let your hearts not be sought, Al Tiru, don't be afraid, etc. Now tell them in the Brayso that Pamayim Dabrimam, there were 2 times that he would speak with them. Achas Besvar, once by the border, by the boundaries when they would leave their land. Achas Bil Muchama, and one was by the war itself. So it says the Mishnah, it says the Gemara, Besvar Mahu Eimer. By the boundary, what would he tell them? Says we continue to in Beis. Shimu divrei marochi amalchama. That listen to the words of the officials, the order of the war, meaning who's fit to come back and who's fit to go. The chizru, and then they would come back, meaning there are certain individuals that they sign up, they enlist, but then they tell them to go back. For example, whoever built a house, whoever planted a vineyard, it's only a vineyard, and he got engaged to a woman, and someone that's, there's different girsais in Rashi, but someone that's afraid. But even though it says over there, V'dibra hashaitrim, so how could you say that this is what the Kohen and Mashuach Muhammad would say by the border? So that the Gemara explains later on that actually the Kohen would say it. It's just that the Shaitrim would be Mashmi and Dvarav La'am. He would amplify the words to the people, but really it was the Kohen who said this. So when they were leaving the border, then he would make this announcement. He says, okay, Rabbi Sai, whoever built a house, whoever planted a vineyard, whoever got engaged, go back home.
So there is possible notice.
He's just saying when they did the announcement.
Why in the world would they do the announcement? It's not necessary.
No, it was, as we'll see, because there's certain people that don't go. There's certain people that go, but they're going to make him come back because they still want them to do certain services. They're still going to have to do certain things, but they were just not going to actually go out and fight. But then there's certain people not going to go at all. But that was the first announcement. Then by the war, actually, when they're coming to fight, by the battle, what does the Mashuach Muhammad say? So that's what it says in Devarim, Al Yerech Lavavchem, let your hearts not be soft, Al Tiru, don't be afraid, Batachbasu, don't tremble, Batartu, don't panic. And these are 4 different types of warnings, because Keneged Arba Dvarim, because this is regarding the 4 things that the idol worshippers would do to intimidate. They would be Megifin, so they would go ahead and they would clash with their shields, Umarian, and they would make loud blasts with their horns, Tzvachin, they would scream with their voice, and Veroimsin, and they would go ahead and make this with the neighing of the horses. And that were the 4 types of intimidation tactics. But Rashi says, why doesn't it mention, as we mentioned in the Mishnah, the shining of their swords and the flood of the soldiers? Because that's the Ikar Machama. That's not to intimidate. Yeah, it's intimidating. It's included in the pasuk the way the Mishnah said it, because it is intimidating to the Jewish soldiers. But what they do for intimidation tactics per se would not be those 2 things, because that's actually just fighting itself. Now, the Mishnah says that the Meshuach Muhammad would calm them by saying that, look, they're coming with Bas of Adam, and you're coming with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Plishtim boy b'netzchenish shel Goliath v'chulu. The Philistines came with the might of Goliath, and look what happened to him. So the Gemara gets into a discussion about Goliath, what actually that he was, and what was the war with him. So Goliath, Rabbi Yochanan says, where did he get his name from? Sha'amad begilu panim, because he stood there with an uncovered face. That's Goli, meaning that's called chutzpah, with brazenness, with audacity. Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shlomo says the pasuk in Shmuel Aleph. Beru lechem ish, choose for yourself a man, the yedid they lie, and let him come down to me. Meaning he's like taunting the Jews, like pick anyone and I'll fight him. Now the ein ish like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, although that's a little translation, but the understanding, the deeper understanding was he was referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Choose for yourself Hashem and let him come fight me. Somebody says the pasuk in the Az Yashir, Hashem ish mochama. Hashem is a man of war. So he was taunting, so to speak, Kaviyachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, yeah, you want to fight me? Harein mapila al yad benish. I'm going to have his downfall through the son of man. Not a man, not a ish, not me. Like it says a pasuk in Shmuel Aleph, but David ben ish Efrat Yazeh. David was a young man, the son of a man from Efrat, and that was his downfall. Another teaching from Amar B'ri Yechanan, Mishum Reb Meir, it says, B'shleishim makaymes, in 3 places, L'chadei piv lo'isar dasha. His mouth said his own downfall. Where do we find Goliath? His own mouth trapping him. Echad, one was the pasuk we just mentioned before. Beru lechem ish v'yedid elai. He said, choose for yourself a man to fight me, and let him come down to me. Now, it sounds like, says Rashi, that not a lie, but a lie on me. Meaning on me means that other one's going to win and overpower me, because he should have said v'ilochem iti. He'll fight with me. What's v'ilochem, a lie or a lie? That he's going to be on the top, and I'm going to be on the bottom. Vidach, the second one is, he said, im yuchali lochem iti. And let's see if that guy could fight with me, v'ikani v'goymer, and he's going to hit me, etc. Now, although he subsequently said, and if I could win and I'll hit him, yeah, but he opened up saying how he's going to lose. He says, let's see if he's going to be able to go and hit me and kill me. So that's a second mistake. Vidach, they come a little David, and the third one was when he said to David, Hakelev anaychi, you think I'm a dog? Cat the boy led b'maklis, that you're going to come to fight me with sticks? Again, referring to himself as a dog, as the haunt, and David hitting him with sticks. So you see that his own words were talking about his downfall. Says David also said to him, Ata boy led b'cherev, that you're coming to me with a sword, b'chanis, with a spear, or b'kidan, and with the javelin, meaning you see that he's also referring to Goliath as if he's going to kill him, to David. Yeah, but says the Gemara, but David responded back, he finished, and he says, what are you coming with the swords? I'm coming to you with the name of Hashem Tzavakas, that you shamed. So like Rashi explains, that's not really called opening up for the bad, because to the contrary, he had to open up that way, because he was coming to say, you're coming to dominate me through something that has no substance, a sword, a spear, and I'm coming to dominate you with the name which all of Netzchanis, all of power, of vanquish, is his, and therefore he had to open up like this. It's not considered opening up Ladra. Now the pasuk says, the Yigash HaPelishti, and this Philistine, this Goliath, he would come near Hashkim Ba'erev on the morning and every morning, every night. What's it coming to refer to? So again, the teaching from Rabbi Yochanan says, as we saw that just saying Shema in the morning and the evening, how great it is. So Goliath would come every morning, every night, because he wanted to stop them from saying Kriya Shema Shachris in the morning. Now it says, "V'yisyatzev arba'am yom," and he stood there for 40 days. What's that alluding to? So Rabbi Yochanan says, "Keneged arba'am yom," that correlates to the 40 days shenitna ben Torah, that the Torah was given. So Rashi explains, meaning, because the Torah was delayed to be received for 40 days, he was given that power to stand over there to try to destroy the Jewish people. Now it says, "V'yetzi ish habeinayim mimachnes pelishtim." Again, it says that a middleman came out from the Philistine camp, etc., which this is referring to Goliath, to fight against the Jewish people. So says the Gemara, "My beinayim." What does it mean, beinayim, the middle one? So Amar Rav, he says, "Shemavuna." It's from the word of built, like a lashon of binyan. Mikomum, from all blemishes, meaning he was fixed and clean from any blemish of any filth. He was a perfect sculpted creature. Now Shmuel, he says, no, it means because the word of Beinani, of Beinani Sheba'achav, he was from the middle of his brother. Meaning there were 4 brothers, as the Gemara will say later on, and he was like the middle of the brothers. The Beit Rabbi Shila Amar, in the Yeshiva Rabbi Shila, they said, because he was made like a building. He was structured like the way a building is, more solid on the bottom. Rabbi Yochanan, he says, Barmeya Papi v'choda Nani. What does that mean? It means a son of a mixture, because many men had relations with his mother in one night. She became impregnated from one of them. Comes out one of them was his father, but the rest were all adulterers. So like Rashi explains, Nani in Persian means father. So of Choda Nani, there was one father, but there was Meya Papi. Papi, it means Prashtora, which means stepfather. So that's what he says. The word Isha Beinayim was a man who came out from many different men. That was this Goliath. And Taisa has a greater discussion regarding this, about who she become pregnant from. But Goliath Shemai, right, so that was who he was. That's why he called Beina Beinayim, because Aroski came in from the mitten, there was 100 stepfathers, but one real father. Now the pasuk says that Goliath Shemai Migas. His name was Goliath from Gas. So Rabbi Yosef taught a brayso. So what does it mean that? Why do you have to know that it came from Gas? What's it referring to? So Shakol Doshnes Imay Kagas. Everyone threshed his mother like the threshing house. That's what a gas is, where they press the produce. So that's like a euphemism for this metaphor that this is what his mother was like. Again, relating to that same idea we just said before, that all these 100 men were intimate with his mother. Similarly, there's a pasuk that says Ksiv in Shmuel Aleph. Pasuk says that pasuk we mentioned before, Behine Ish Habeinayim Oila, a middle man came out. Goliath Hapalishti was his name, Migas. So the next words actually says, it's actually written Mimarochis Plishtim, but that's only how it's read. But the Gemara tells us that it's actually written Mima'aris Hapalishtim, from the caves of the Pelishtim. But we read it from the armies of the Pelishtim. Now, turn of Yosef is to the Bryce. So what is it? Why is it written Ma'aris? So although it means caves, but it means Shakol Heru Be'imar, because everyone did hara. Hara is the initial stage of cohabitation, of genital contact. So that's again the reference of he came out from Ma'aris and Pelishtim. All the Philistines that did hara with his mother, that's who this Goliath was. Now Ksiv says a pasuk in Shmuel Beis. It says Harafa. It says Asher b'yalde b'yalide Harafa, that these were the children of Harafa. Now she's Arpa, as the Gemara is going to say later on, where it was decreed on her that her sons should fall in the sword from the hands of the sons of Rus, who she clinged to the divine presence. So that refers to Arpa, but it calls her over there Harafa. Uksiv, but it says in the pasuk in the Megillas Rus, it says Arpa. It says Shema Achas Arpa. So what's going on? Was her name Harafa or was it Arpa? So we have two interpretations, Rav and Shmuel. Chadama, one says that Harafa Shema, her name was Harafa. Arpa. Why was she called Arpa? Shakol Arfin Oise Machareha, because everyone, Oirif is the back of the neck. Everyone was by the back of her neck from behind her. meaning that she made herself hefker, ownerless, like an animal, where the mating is done the face to the back. And that's how this woman, this Arpa, did the sister-in-law of Rus, where she made herself like Arpa, that they were orphan or semachara. Or the other one, Chadama Arfa Shma, the other one says no, her name was Arpa. Why would she call her Rafa? Again, a similar idea. Shakol Dashanoisa Karifas, because everyone threshed her, again, that's a euphemism, like Harifas. What's Harifas? Rashi sells that's crushed wheat. So everyone was threshing like crushed wheat. That was the mechanism, and that's why she was called Harafa. Like it says a pasuk in Shmuel Beis that we see that's what Harafa means. So the woman took Vatifres es hamasach. She spread out the curtain al panei be'er on the opening of the well. But tishtach is the gears of Allah harisa. She spread on it the crushed wheat. Sisi harifis means the crushed wheat. That's why she was called Harafa, because they treated her like in the way of crushing wheat. Or if you want to bring a source from here, pasuk in Mishlei. Pasuk says, "Im tichtoish es ha'evel b'machtesh." If you're going to crush the fool in the mortar, b'toich harifos, in the crushed wheat, be'eli, with the pestle. Still, the pasuk concludes, "Leisasim olav ivalti." You're not going to remove from him his foolishness. But again, you see that the word harifos means the crushed wheat. That's why her name was Harafa. Now it says over there, Es arbas eila yuldu laharafa bagas. So these were the 4 children that Harafa had in Gas. And v'yiplu b'yadav, but they fell into the hands of David and the hands of his servants. It says Gemara, Ma'inihu, who are these 4 sons that Harafa had? So Amar Rav Chizda says it's Saf, Umadon, Golyas, v'yishbi, b'noiv, in Noiv. These are all written in Sefer Shmuel. Now, when it says in the pasuk "V'yiplu b'yad David v'yad Adav," that they fell into the hands of David and the hands of his servants, so the Gemara brings the siv because it says the pasuk in Rus. We know the famous story that Nami said, "Oh, leave! What do you want from me, an old woman? And my sons are died." So it says "V'tishak Arpa l'chamaisa." So Arpa kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. Rus davkaba. But Rus clung. She clinged. She connected. She stayed with her mother-in-law. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Yovid b'nei hanashuka. Let this interesting way of describing it. But let the sons of the ones who gave the farewell kiss to her mother-in-law to separate from her, which she did not convert, let them come v'yiplu b'yad b'nei advuka, and fall into the hands of the sons who were connecting, who stayed connected to her mother-in-law and was megayeres and became a Jew. That's why that they were Yipla b'yad David or b'yad Avadav based on that incident previously in history. Now, Darash Rabbi expounded b'schar arba demois, in the merit of 4 tears, sharida arpa al chamoisa, that Arpa shed for her mother-in-law, that she had to take leave. For those 4 tears, she merited that out of her came 4 mighty ones. Like it says in the pasuk over there, it says Vatisenu koilen, that they lifted up their voice, Vativken, and she cried. Oid. So oid means the second time, because it said that she cried. So oid is another time. So Rashi explained the 4 tears is because you have 2 cries from 2 eyes. Crying one time is 2 tears, and then oid another time is another 2 tears. In the merit of those 4 tears, she merited these 4 giants. Like Siv, it says a pasuk in Shmuel Aleph that chet, the way it's written, it's not actually written like that, because we write it the way we read it, but it's written chetz chanisai, the shaft of his spear. But it mean that was kimagoy or ergim, like the way it describes what it was like. But at Bekarina, we actually read it eitz chanisai, the wood of his spear. So as Rashi tells us, the word chetz, why does it say that if we read it eitz, the wood of his spear? Why are we using the word chetz? The word chetz also means chatzi, half. The pasuk coming to tell you, because there it talks about the might of this Goliath, and it describes it in great detail, how mighty, how big everything was. The pasuk coming to tell you that it didn't even tell you half of his might. So Amar Rebbe Lazar, he says, Adayin lo higa'anu, we didn't even reach l'chatzi shivcha shloisa rasha, to even half of the praise of that wicked person. So why is it telling us that? Mikan shas l'sapeh b'shivcha shadasham. It's coming to tell you that you're not allowed to talk about the praise of the wicked. Meaning he was an incredible person. but we only said half of it. So it says, but like lift up cloud. So don't talk, don't open up, don't say anything. I want to talk about the praise of David, that he fought with this mighty one and he was able to beat him. Therefore, that's why we talk about his shvach. Now the Mishnah said further, okay, we spoke about Goliath. Then it says Bnei Ammon. It said, okay, the people of Ammon, Bo, Ben Etzchayne, Shal Shevach, they came with the might of Shevach, and he fell by the sword, and they fell with him. And don't worry, you're coming with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now the Gemara discusses him. Ksiv, it's written again. It says Shevach. It calls him Shevach, which is a dovekat. So that pasuk is in Sefer Shmuel Beis. Yet Ksiv, many times we have this, that Dibra Yamim, the Chronicles, goes repeats over a lot of history that we have in other Sifrei Nach. It says in Dibra Yamim Aleph, Shoifach, which is a term of pouring. So what was his name? Shevach or Shefach? So Rabbi Shmuel, they have two different interpretations. One says his name was Shefach. Why was his name Shevach? Why was he called Shevach? Because he was made like a dovekat. Meaning that's how he was built. One says that actually no, Shevach Shmai, his name was Shevach. Why was he called Shefach? I say because whoever would see him, Nishbach Lafanav Kikitan, would pour forth like a flask. So it was a term of pouring out, like the guy would literally just melt and pour out. Now it says a pasuk in Yirmiyah that this is talking about by the soldiers, the armies of Nebuchadnezzar. Why are we bringing this over here? So Rashi says, since we picked the Machlekes Rab and Shmuel regarding all the drashas of these psukim, so we see further these other interpretations of Rabbi Shmuel how to explain these psukim, but it's not really connected to what we were talking about before, which was Goliath and the Shevach regarding fighting the armies of the idol worshippers. But the pasuk says Ashpasai, his container for his archery, for his bows and arrows, was, maybe that's another reference. Kekeva Pasuach was like an open grave. Kulam Gibaitim, they're almighty ones. So what is this referring to? So Rabbi Shmuel, some say Rabbi Asi, Chanama one says the Shosha Zork and Chetz, when they would when they would shoot an arrow, it would make garbage dumps of dead people. So that's the term ashpasoi. Why is it saying kekeva besuach? Why is it saying it's comparing how big the holder for his arrows were, like an open grave? You couldn't find a better metaphor. So no, it's saying that because when they would kill people, it would be like an ashpa of like an open grave, because they would kill piles of dead people with one arrow. That was by the armies of the Nebuchadnezzar. Now, maybe you're going to say that maybe they weren't mighty. Maybe they were just very professional in the art of war. No, Tamalim it says, Kulam Gibayrim, they were almighty. That's one pshat. Chadama one says, no, b'shosha oisin sarchein, when they would take care of the bodily needs, when they would relieve themselves, oisin hashpasas shal zebel, they would make garbage dumps and garbage dumps of excrement, because since they ate so much in their might, so they relieved themselves in a big way. Now, maybe you're going to say, maybe you're going to say, yeah, of course they did that because they had intestinal illnesses, but it's not talking about their praise. No, Tamalim says in the pasuk, Kulam Gibayim. No, the Almighty, and because they were mighty, they ate like truckloads of food. Therefore, when they relieved themselves, they let out truckloads of excrement. Now, Amar Rav Mori says parenthetically, Shema Minah, from the fact that we needed the pasuk to say Kulam Gibayim, because you would have thought to say that when they're making these ashpais of zevel, you would have thought they have intestinal illnesses, that obviously you can infer that Haimad the Nafesh Zibli, someone who has a lot of waste matter, that he's someone that has intestinal illness. Says, what's the difference to us? Why do we need to know this important information? Is that a person should go look for treatment before his illness weighs down on him. If he sees that he's having this type of bodily function, it's important to go check that out. Now, the pasuk says in Mishlei, and again, because we're saying the Rabbi Rabasi now, who is the other version of Rav and Shmuel, so therefore we pick these other psukim. The well-known pasuk in Mishlei, Da'aga b'levish, when there's worry in the heart of man, yashchena. So that really means to say like he should push it down. But Rabbi Rabasi, they say, Chadam, one says, Yischenu midaitoi. So a well-known tactic for distress tolerance is distraction techniques. You should remove it from your thought process. Distract yourself. A very good option for worry, for anxiety. Chadam one says, no, yesechenu la'acherim. So you should speak it over to others. Also, talk therapy. These are two obviously very great options for daiga. Either yesechenu medaitai, remove your thoughts from it, distract yourself, or go ahead and talk to others. Now, the Mishnah said that va'atim iatim kain. You're not like this, v'chulu, etc. You have Hashem, you have the machna, arain. Don't worry. Now, it says why do you have to say so much to them? What was this guarantee that he's promising them? Ki Hashem alikeichem ha'oilech. Why didn't you just say, Ki Hashem alikeichem imachem? Hashem is with you. What's this ha'ilech imachem? What's this going? Sounds like literally Hashem is going. Yeah, Hashem b'chol kinuya. But that's because Hashem, with all his different descriptions, as we continue about Memgil Manav, Munachin ba'aron are placed in the aron, which Tais discusses what was in the aron, which aron, but that all went out with them to the war. Like it says the pasuk in Midbar, Yishlach Isam Moshe sent them 1,000 to the tribe, Latzava to the army, Isam Ves Pinchas, them and Pinchas. What is this referred to in the psukim? Who went out to fight with them? So Isam, that refers to Elis Sanhedrin. That was the Sanhedrin. That's them, the high court. Pinchas Zemeshoch Muhammad, he was the anointed one of the war to give them these speeches. But Klei HaKodesh and the holy vessels, Ze'arain v'luchas, this is the ark and the luchas inside of it. That's what we're saying. Hashem literally went with them, where he went with them with the aron. V'chatzotza trua and the trumpets that blast, Elah shofars, that refers to the shofars. Now, we learned in the Brisa, Lo lechinam halach Pinchas Muhammad. So, parenthetically, once we got into that discussion, now that we mentioned the pasuk that Hashem went with them, and one of them in the pasuk that we said was Pinchas, who is the Mashiach Muhammad, it's not for nothing that Pinchas was the Mashiach Muhammad, because El Lipara Din Avi Imoy. In that pasuk where Moshe Rabbeinu appointed all these people to go out to the war, that Pinchas was there to exact judgment and retribution from his mother's father. Krishna says the pasuk in Bereshis is V'hamadanim. So this was when they were fighting Midyan. It says the Midyanim were Machru Isal Mitzrayim. They sold Yosef to the Egyptians. So to take revenge, Pinchas, his grandson, was fighting the Midyanim. Says the Gemara, is that to say the Pinchas Yosef Asi? Pinchas came from Yosef. It said Velazar ben Aaron, which was the father of Pinchas. He took from the daughters of Patil as a wife. My love, isn't it? The Asam Yisra that he came from Yisra, Shapitim, the word Patil is Shapitim, and El, Puti El, Shapitim El Golem, that he stuffed the calves for the El, for the Avodah Zarah. So what are you saying he came from Yosef when he came from Yisra? No, Yosef, he came from Yosef, that Putil means Shapitpit Beyitzra. Actually, Yitzhar is El Zar Begufish Adam, that he went and he degraded and he conquered and he vanquished and he didn't consider significant his Yitzhar. So that's where Pinchas came from. And that's who Elazar married, a daughter from Yosef. But how could you say that? But the tribes, they degraded, as the Gemara said, Sanhedrin of Pebezim Abayz, that they degraded Pinchas when he went and he killed Zimri. Reisam ben Puti, you see the son of this Puti? Ben Shapitim Aviima Agol this. Who does he think he is? A komt von Zaydes that stuffed the calves of Avodah Zarah. Yarig Nasim Yisrael. He's going to kill one of the leaders of the Jewish people. So therefore, the pasuk had to give him the lineage over there. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon Hakoyin, to know where is the Zayda. But you see, he came from Yisri, not from Yosef. So the Gemara says, you're right, it's both. If you say that his mother's father was from Yosef, so then his mother's mother was from Yisrael. And if his mother's mother was from Yosef, then then his mother's father was from Yisrael. And says the Gemara, Dekanami, a precise reading indicates the Chasiv, the pasuk says, Mebnois Putiel. That yud over there, it could have said Putel. What's Putiel? That today mashma, that sounds like two. So that Shema Mino infers that yes, there's two elements in this Putiel. There's the Pitpit Yitzroi, that's Yosef, and then there's Shapitim Agolam Labatikachavim, that was that of Yisroi, and therefore he came from both of them. Thank you to any time for hosting us. And that's why I was trying to make